Welcome to a Guild Wars 2 update. Let's see, on Thursday, actually earlier in the week, ArenaNet announced that they were actually going to have some live events happening this weekend. I believe it was announced on Monday, I can't remember for sure. I've slept since then. The week is a blur. The basic concept is that, as you would see in some of the video below, behind me here, basically you start getting the Mordrem, which are the minions of the great green dragon, the nature dragon, Mordremoth. You start getting Mordrem invading other parts of Tyria, the world of Guild Wars 2. Normally, you only see minions of Mordremoth in either Dry Top or Silver Wastes. There are these two level 80 zones way off in the corner, west end of the map, and they happen to be the actual eastern end of an area of the map called the Maguma Jungle. We don't have the rest of the Maguma Jungle yet. That is actually going to be coming in the Heart of Thorns update. So we'll get the rest of the Maguma Jungle unlocked, and basically what that will net us is being able to go through, explore new regions of the map. I think it's going to be 4 new world zones when it first comes out, and they're multi-layer world zones. They're not as flat as some of the other areas are, specifically because there's new jumping mechanics for traversing higher and lower zone areas. I think are mushrooms. And there's a hang gliding system, so you can jump off some of the higher areas and hang glide down to the lower areas, which sounds very cool to me. I can't wait for it. But basically what they're having is the 3 kind of second tier newbie zones, not the level 1 to 15 stuff that you get introduced right when you make a new character. This is the second layer of that stuff. This is Kessex Hills, which is 15 to 25. All these level zones are level 15 to 25. It's Kessex Hills, Brisbane Wildlands, and the Diessa Plateau. Diessa Plateau, I think is how it's said. And from west to east, that is Brisbane, Kessex, and Diessa. And basically the way this works is on the half hour, so at 10:30, 11:30, 12:30, one of those 3 zones will get invaded. Let's say at 8:30 in the morning, let's say at 8:30 in the morning, Brisbane, the westernmost zone, starts getting invaded. At 8:30 it would start. It would progress for 30 minutes, and there's a timer midway up the right side. You'll probably see it ticking down on the right side of my screen just above medals, just below my daily quests. It will say how long this invasion phase is lasting. It lasts for 30 minutes. You fight off as much and defeat as many of your Mordrem minions as possible, the Mordrem invasion as possible in that zone. Then they all retreat. Now, here's what happens. During the invasion phase, right when it kicks off, everybody that's in the zone gets an invisible buff, and it starts with a counter of 0. There are little zones on the map. You'll see them as crossed swords at various points, and that's where they will actually start popping up around those crossed swords on the map. When you go to an area that has Mordrem in it, what happens is you have to actually defeat the Mordrem and then defeat the Vine Wrath, this big thing coming up out of the ground like a worm from Dune. You have to defeat this Vine Wrath spawner. It's basically the kind of the thing that spawns them first. So first, destroy the minions, then destroy the actual Vine Wrath itself. Now, there's a couple of different versions. There's, I think, 3 different types of this. There's one where the Vine Wrath just comes up out of the ground, and you defeat the minions while pecking away at the Vine Wrath itself. That was pretty easy. The second one is where the Vine Wrath pops up out of the ground, but then it spawns blooms that shield it and protect it. And the blooms start spawning monsters. So you have to defeat the blooms, get the monsters away from them, defeat the blooms, and once you defeat all 4 blooms, then you can attack the Vine Wrath and kill it. The third type is where the Vine Wrath isn't even reachable. It's up on a cliffside on the edge of the zone, and it spawns 2 or 3 catapults. You have to get on one of those catapults. It also has a crate that has a crate of repair hammers. So you have to get on the catapult. You only have a catapult manned by 1 person at a time, and you're firing shots up on the Vine Wrath while all the other people in the zone are defending those 3 catapults and trying to repair them from the Mordrem that are spawning. In every instance, once the Vine Wrath dies, then you get one of that invisible counter moved to a visible counter. You get a visible buff that starts off at 1. Every Vine Wrath in your zone you defeat, you actually get it incrementally boosted to the next step up. I'm going to see if I can bring up a Reddit while I'm talking to you here. The Guild Wars 2 Reddit specifically, there was a conversation about this. So, basically, when you are fighting the Mordrem invasion in a zone, it only lasts for 30 minutes. When it stops at the top of the hour, then there's 30-minute cooldown, and it goes to the next zone over. So it would go from Brisbane Wildlands, over near the Asura, next to Keswick Hills, and the Keswick Hills is over near the human starting city. Then it would start 30 minutes later, so there's a 30-minute cooldown. So if it started at 8:30 in Brisbane, it would go to Keswick Hills at 9:30 and start there. And then at 10:30, it would start in Diessa, and then at 11:30, it wraps back around to Brisbane, and it loops like that constantly. So there's cooldowns. It's not a constant event. And these events also do not block the normal events that happen in Zone. Those keep going. So zones get very busy very quickly. Now, what's important about the count, the little buff that you actually get? Most of these events, when I did them, I was getting a buff up to about 10 or 12, a count of 10, a count of 12. Sometimes it was really busy, and the opponents were getting killed quickly in a busier zone. Then I was getting about 6 to 8. But I've heard of some people getting upwards of, I think, 20 is the top end stack. Once you get 20 or higher, it's all the same bonus. And basically, you get a certain number of blossoms. I think they're called either blossoms or blooms. I think they're blooms. You get a certain number of blooms as an item in your inventory when the event finishes after 30 minutes. All of your buffs are counted up. The counter for your buff is counted up, and you get a certain number of blooms per counter point, basically. Plus, you get 20 bonus blooms for doing it the first time during a day. So, the only problem is that I was getting like 10 to 12 and only getting a bloom count of about 20 to 25. Maybe, tops. I think it's 5 blooms. It's either 5 blooms, I think it's 5 blooms per counter at lower levels. Per counter from like 1 to like 3 or 4, I think it is. You get 5 blooms. From like 5 to 10, you get 10 blooms. So getting 25, that means I was kind of maxing out, I think. Plus, there was another event just before that where I got my bonus 20 blooms. Now, this may not sound, there's not much reference to that. Well, okay, what I'm going to do with 25 blooms. The downside here is the economy that's been instilled in every single zone. Now, this is not on the zone timer. It's always. You'll see a special NPC marked on the map. That NPC is basically a Mordrem researcher, is what they're called. If you go there, then you can turn in, and this is any of those 3 zones I've been talking about, Keswick Hills, Brisbane Wildlands, or Diessa Plateau. If you go to any 3 of those and you go to the researcher will take your bloom plus some of your just normal gold, your normal coins, and you can buy certain things like special kinds of cosmetic armor, special kinds of actual armor. You can buy a lot of cosmetic goods that were only available during Season 1 of the Living World, which you have to now buy as DLC in the gem store in order to get those items. You have to buy Season 1 of the Living World, go through it yourself or with friends, and so there's some of those goods that are being recycled back into the game because ArenaNet really wanted to introduce them back, and this was a good opportunity to do it. Now, it's very cool. There's lots of fun, neat items. The only problem is, if I actually farmed, this event is only happening through Monday. So it started on Friday. I've already lost a couple of days. No, it started on Thursday, the 10th. So it's basically Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday morning, I think it ends. If you farmed all 4 days, you no-lifed it, and you did all 4 days, as much as you could, bare minimum sleep with all of your bonuses, you're maybe going to have enough coins and enough bloom. Well, you're only going to have enough bloom to buy maybe 2 interesting items, tops. And then the event vanishes. There are no gold bonuses. There are no normal item drops from the monsters. When you're killing these Mordrem, you are getting nothing aside from an actual boost to your counter for the event itself. Whoop. And that's it. So the question then becomes, is it worth it? Now, when they first launched it on Thursday, it was bugged and the counters weren't working. So people were playing the event, but they actually weren't getting their counter changed in for Bloom. So their counter would vanish at the end of the event and they'd get nothing in return. And that got a lot of people pissed. They went to Reddit. There was a campaign. And needless to say, the dev said, oh, no, you're supposed to be getting something. I'm sorry. They put in a very quick patch. They fixed it. And then people started getting these blooms. But then very quickly, more posts started erupting over Reddit and various other forums stating that the reward level seems very, very low. You're not getting... They even turned off the normal event rewards and the normal item drop rewards for the Mordrem. So you're not even getting normal gold for completing an event, which is hardcore. That is, normally, a lot of my gold comes from not defeating monsters, but conquering events in an area because of the monster I've defeated, fending off a wave of attackers, whatever. That's where a lot of my money has come from. That's selling items. It's kind of an equal balance between, doing quests, doing events, and selling items. About a third of my income. And they've turned it off for this event. These zones are 15 to 25, which means that most people that have just started on a free-to-play account are probably up to 15 and starting to experience this. If you're higher than that, you automatically get scaled down to whatever level the zone is, because that's how Guild Wars works. If I go back to the newbie zones, I become level 3, 4, 5 again, which is cool. I still have all my abilities, and I have lower hit points and lower damage output, but I'm still better on the same curve, when compared to other people of the same level. So... There's been a lot of outrage. First, the outrage was it was bugged, but then they fixed that. Next, they actually started doing a fix for this so that there was so that the actual event rewards started dropping. But then after that, more people started getting pissed because the rewards seemed very, very puny, very minuscule, and a lot of people aren't happy about this. So the real question becomes, the events can be fun, but as you're probably seeing by a lot of this video, most of the time I didn't know what was going on. I was trying to find a target that wasn't getting insta-killed by this massive herd of people I was running through. And this is probably going to be 15 FPS footage most of the time anyway. Sorry, I tried my best. So yeah. It's now gotten to the point where there are people that are raging, not because they're not getting rewards. They're getting rewards, but the rewards aren't quote-unquote good enough. And that's where a really big kind of question starts to come into play as to what is qualified as good enough. Is ArenaNet really chinsing out their players? Or is the enjoyment of the event enough? Should that be enough of a minimum that getting the blossoms and potential for other stuff on top of that is a bonus? And that's a question I am ill-equipped to answer. But... there are some warnings that I should give all of you guys before you start diving into this. First of all, don't stress out. You're going to miss some of this stuff. And there is content that will come into this game and will cycle back out of it. And you're going to miss it. And you're just going to have to get over it. You cannot Pokemon. You cannot catch them all. If you try to, you will probably break your bank trying to do it, or break yourself trying to put enough time into it. So limit yourself. Know that there are going to be things, drops, events that you're just going to miss. Point number 2. If you don't get enough blossoms to get something neat, I'm sorry, it's fine. Just stick those blossoms in the bank somewhere and save them. I guarantee you they'll probably come back up in Heart of Thorns at some point after Heart of Thorns launch in late October. Number 3. There are bugs or quote-unquote flaws in the design of the event. First of all, this buff, well, mainly the buff that you actually get. The buff that counts how many Vine Wrath that you have actually killed. If you get disconnected, you lose that buff, which means if you get up to a counter of 10 and then get disconnected and reconnect, you're now at 0. Congratulations. If you change zones, it resets to 0. If you change characters, it resets to 0. So there are numerous ways where you can get ripped off and gypped out of your rewards that you have gotten, even if those rewards may be meager to begin with. So be careful. Do not try to get too mad at the game if you get disconnected. Some zones are going to be having a lot more disconnect issues because they're getting flooded with people that want some of this gear that's from Living World Season 1. And this is their best way to get it without paying for the DLC. The Season 1 pack, base adventure pack. That is really good coffee. So pace yourself. Don't get mad at the game. Try not to get too frustrated about things. I'm quite sure that ArenaNet's going to hop on it. They might even extend the event. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets rerun next weekend, specifically because of some of the bumps and hiccups they've had in the roadway with launching it. They might see some of the player feedback and go, you know what, the actual rewards are too low. Or they might tell us, sorry, we think it's fine, and the event never repeats. Keep your eyes open, but I wanted to make sure that you knew what you were getting into ahead of time. I'd like to give a quick shout out to my brother, Critch. Some of you might know him as the Grumpy Old Man. Critch was nice enough to actually step on middle of the afternoon into Guild Wars 2 and help me get some footage of this and track down some of the nonsense going on. We were on TeamSpeak together actually trying to get what the heck was going on and how to defeat some of these things exchanged back and forth between us. So thank you very much, brother. I appreciate it. I will talk to you guys later. Make sure you have a good weekend. Try the event out. Just don't stress yourself too much. Bye-bye.